Greetings. Today I'm going to talk about Pirsig's view of Zen and Zen meditation and how this can aid us in navigating the technological age, and I'm going to use the wisdom of a couple of other geniuses as well. So thanks for watching. The internet has created a hyperlinked, hyper-efficient, and hyper-political world. It's a world in which every physical need can conceivably be met, but meaning is lost to distraction, an endless array of choices, and infinite ways of creating reality and commodifying ideas. Even mindfulness and meditation have been commodified to the point of almost meaninglessness in some cases. But behind virtue-signaling mindfulness and pop Buddhism is meaning. It's a practice that goes back thousands of years and really is meant as, for one thing, a way to get to a state of being in the world that allows for discernment, for subjective experience of what is, rather than looking through a lens tethered to the past or the future. This way of being can help us face what we're up against in this information age. And one thing we're up against is the degree to which our thoughts and opinions are being formulated for us to a certain extent. And I'm not suggesting conspiracy. This is just the way the delivery of the digital flow of information is evolving. And I'll add a brief example of that a little bit later by a very smart man. Meditation and the resulting transformation of consciousness is a direct conduit to the substrate of being, to the, I guess you could say, spiritual and noetic dimension, which is a place from which we can discern truth as it arises, and we all have access to this dimension. Robert Pirsig was a practicing Zen Buddhist. When he wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the trendiness of Buddhism that is so prevalent today was in its infancy. People looked to ancient texts to figure it out, and modern masters like Alan Watts and Dr. Suzuki were serious scholars of Eastern thought. Pirsig has himself mentioned Suzuki as an influence. Here's part of an interview that Pirsig did in 1974, right when the book came out, and this is sort of discussing his view of the Zen way of being in the world and Zen meditation.
The stuckness is kind of what you call non-doing, and our whole society is set up for doing. We always ask a person when we want to know about them, well, what do you do? You know, well, actually, in Zen, the correct answer is I don't do anything except sit. You know, and they say you just sit around, don't do anything. Yes, exactly. You know, and I say, well, something wrong with that. I mean, what do you really do, you know? And the reason this question is asked again and again and again is because people are predisposed to think that unless you are doing something, something's wrong.
So here's a reading from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance related to this clip, in which he's addressing the benefit of stuckness and giving a little bit more of an overview of what it is. Let's consider a reevaluation of the situation in which we assume that the stuckness now occurring, the zero of consciousness, isn't the worst of all possible situations, but the best possible situation you could be in. After all, it's exactly this stuckness that Zen Buddhists go to so much trouble to induce through koans, deep breathing, sitting still, and the like. Your mind is empty. You have a hollow, flexible attitude of beginner's mind. You're right at the front end of the train of knowledge, at the track of reality itself. Consider for a change that this is a moment not to be feared but cultivated. If your mind is truly profoundly stuck, then you may be much better off than when it was loaded with ideas. One thing he's doing in this paragraph is giving a positive view of stuckness, or involuntary or voluntary non-doing, which most Westerners, as he said, would see as purely negative. But more importantly here, he's describing the essential state of Zen, which is that of total open receptivity to subjective experience, or what is phenomenologically in the present. And in this way you can discern what is true, what is good, what is meaningful, or as Pirsig would say, what is quality. And then on that uncorrupted information that you're getting from that state, you can act accordingly. When you look at this classic by Suzuki, Manual of Zen Buddhism, which at the time was the definitive go-to book for Zen Buddhism, and may very well still be, I'm not sure, this was published in 1960, but he was writing way before that. This book is full of all manner of descriptions of the Zen mind, how it feels and how it looks. I found an extraordinary YouTuber and psych professor by the name of Dr. Eric Dodson, and he's a brilliant, multifaceted guy who kind of reminds me of Pirsig, the way he talks and the way he thinks. And this little clip of Dodson is from a video he released a couple days ago called Meditation and Psychology, and he is also a practicing meditator, at the very least, potentially a practicing Buddhist. In the whole video, it's making the case to integrate meditation in with Western-style psychology. So this small section I'm playing is where he's discussing intelligence, and intelligence as a cognitive psychological construct, but also he introduces an alternative type of intelligence, which is a receptive state accessed through meditation.
IQ as a psychological construct is basically about how full and how active our minds are. However, from the point of view of the kind of meditative consciousness I'm describing here, intelligence is something very different. It's much more about how empty and still, and hence how receptive our minds can be. That's because a mind that's overly full and always whirring frenetically is not a mind that's likely to perceive the reality of the present moment clearly and accurately. Nor is it likely to respond to the demands of the present moment harmoniously. So it turns out that from a meditative perspective, what we commonly regard as intelligence, how full and active our minds are, is actually a form of stupidity disguised as cognitive agility. In other words, our usual psychological conception of intelligence is actually a deviation from its true nature.
So this video is making a case for meditation, Zen meditation, to be viewed in conjunction with Western psychology as we know it, and add the receptive, experiencing, non-doing side to our active thinking, doing side, and in that case making us more complete and introspective and insightful human beings. And here's more of the Pirsig interview where he makes a very similar suggestion.
And this is a part of the value of the sitting meditation, is that you're instructed just to sit there and prevent yourself from doing anything. And you find that this is not as easy as you thought it would be. You think, well, gee, now I don't have to do anything. That's easy. But you discover after about 10 minutes that this is very, very hard, and that there are as many degrees of difficulty in non-doing as there are in doing. And to become skilled at non-doing is quite as difficult as becoming skilled at doing. But then after you acquire both skills, skills at doing and skills at non-doing, you find that if you're stuck in traffic, it doesn't create frustration. You just swing into your non-doing life. That is, if your car won't go forward, you just sit in your car and you build your life that way. It's almost like photosynthesis and respiration. You know, if a plant just gets nothing but sunlight, it's very harmful. It has to have darkness too. And in the sunlight, it converts carbon dioxide to oxygen, but in the darkness, it takes oxygen and converts it back into carbon dioxide. And I think people are like that. You have to have some periods of doing and some periods of non-doing. And when you get both of them in a mixture back and forth, then you really lead a much fuller life than if you're always committed to doing. So many people say, well, I don't see the purpose of Zen, you see, or the purpose of just meditation. And the reason they don't see it is because they're committed to doing it. You don't do anything, you know. But when you don't do anything, all that garbage in your head that's accumulated from all this doing during the day starts to come to the surface and float away, and your life is purified again, or at least your mental life, psychic life. And this is very valuable, and I think it's a practice which is coming in very strongly, and not just in Zen, in all the meditative disciplines.
Now back to my original point. It's all the more important in this internet world that we live in to be able to look at it through the beginner's mind, through the Zen state of receptivity. It's often as if the media and the press and social media is thinking for us, is formulating our opinions. And I don't know if you know Scott Adams. He's the creator of the comic strip Dilbert, and he's a very astute political commentator. So here's what he had to say about how the media helps us formulate our opinions. And this is from the other night.
I don't think Walter Cronkite could have ended the Republic. Do you know why? Because he didn't have A/B testing, or at least not as robustly as we do now. The reason that the press went from a benign source of information to holy crap, it's dangerous now. It might be a force for good, but it's also a big risky force because it has so much power. And because they can A/B test every message, every headline, every story, they know exactly where to head for your amygdala. Is that the part of the brain? I don't know anything about brains, but the part of the brain that just tweaks your emotions and makes you crazy. And they can find that through technology. Walter Cronkite was just reporting the news. The press today is half information, half propaganda, and half Frankenstein science. The Frankenstein science part is that they know how to reprogram your damn brain, like actually literally. So when I say the press knows how to program your brain, that's not figurative language. They're actually physically changing the pathways in your brain, and they have learned how to do it at an insanely effective level because they can test every message and then adjust quickly to whatever works best.
I fear if we don't have access to the state of non-doing, to the alternative intelligence, to the beginner's mind, to the Zen state, we are going to continue to be bobbing along helplessly on waves of very addictive digital constructs. So if you take what Scott said seriously, and I do, we may already be in that state, a state of what I guess you could characterize it as quasi-singularity, I suppose. But there's an antidote, and the antidote potentially is each of us being able to harness this meditative state of non-doing, and in non-doing observance we can step back and see what's really going on and evaluate what we are hearing and looking at. As Pirsig said in the interview, all that garbage in our head has to float away with purification, and meditation is a type of purification of the mind. In that way, with this practice, you have half a chance of making up your own mind and not letting some algorithm do it for you. So I hope that made sense, and I'll see you next time.